Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Wesley demands.
Now this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you. I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or whatever movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up and welcome to Or Whatever Movies. I'm your co-host, Iris, and I'm here with my older brother,
Wesley.
Today we're talking a movie from 2024 in theaters, Alex Garland's Civil War.
I feel like there was a rhyme there that you missed. A24's Civil Wars, something like that.
A24's 2024 Civil War.
That, like that, right? See? Because this is a fun, bubbly movie. It lends itself well to rhymes. So why did we see Civil War where I was dragged into this conflict against my will?
Yeah, the question is, why didn't you want to see Civil War?
Alex Garland has burned me one too many times. He was a personal hero of mine of sorts. Way back in the day when he penned The Beach, he won an award for novelists under 30. At the time, also being under 30, I was like, I want to be this dude. I will publish multiple novels before I'm 30. Didn't really happen, but then he went on to 28 Days Later and all this stuff, and he was collaborator with Danny Boyle. As much as people didn't like The Beach, I liked aspects of The Beach, and the novel was perfectly good. And then he started directing movies, and it started out very promising with Ex Machina. You could see the darker tones in that movie. And then he took all the darkness and all the weirdness, and he completely ran with that football, never letting go, never passing it to anyone else. It was just him wanting to be Danny Boyle with none of the restraint. Subsequently directed Annihilation. That's a whole discussion in and of itself. And then Men, which you never saw. And had you seen Men, you would have been like, Civil War, bro, I'm not really sure. But it seems to be, if it's possible, his commercial one, his accessible one.
You seem to say that with some reservation.
It's not less weird or frustrating. He would like to say, and has said, that he wants it to be thought-provoking. I admit I haven't really stopped thinking about Civil War, acknowledging that we're going to discuss it. We will have started discussing it soon after, but it's weird. It's a movie of contradictions is the best I can pin it down.
You said commercial and accessible. It seems, despite its dour, pretty hopeless subject matter, pretty accessible. The goals of these characters very clear and set up from the beginning. They want to get to DC, and they want to get the story, and they don't want to get scooped. And if they could live, if they could survive along the way, then that's a bonus. And so the premise, the plot, right, pretty simple and therefore accessible. And you're right, I haven't seen Men, but even so, when Brian was like, Civil War, and I was like, Fall Guy? He was like, Civil War. I was like, Civil War? Like, definitely questioning him. Like, that's the one you want to see on our Friday night date night? So I was like, I can play ball, Civil War. Okay, we get behind it. And got you to get behind it and rallied the troops. And we all went to see Civil War.
See, but that is not, I understand that. Concessions in a marriage are necessary. You got to back Brian's play, and sometimes he chooses the movie. And it's not like it's not ripe for discussion. What is extraordinary about this story is this is a domino effect. Brian's like Civil War, and you're like, Civil War? And he's like, Civil War. And so you're like, Civil War, and I'm like, Civil War, and you're like, Civil War. And I'm like, Civil War. And I go to Kelly, and I'm like, Civil War, and she's like, Civil War. And I'm like, Civil, and she was like, I swear to God, she was like, yeah, why not? And I was like, really? Number one, she hates war movies. Number two, she was there with me for Men, for Annihilation, for Ex Machina, all of them. I was flabbergasted that she would agree to such a thing.
How long was it into the film where one or the other of you turned to the other and was like, mm-mm?
It was strangely engaging because it wasn't a brutality for brutality's sake kind of movie. It wasn't egregiously bloody. There was lots of blood, but you didn't see the sniper get shot. You didn't see half of the people die on screen where their deaths were implied. I assume because he wanted the deaths that we do see on screen to be impactful. Whether or not that was the case is up for some debate. But no, we weren't disapproving necessarily during the course of the movie.
Okay, because about 20 minutes in, Brian definitively turned to me and was like, let's go.
So really? Brian wanted to leave the movie that he took you to see?
Yeah, he was like, I made the wrong choice.
Wow.
I'm prepared to leave if you are. And I was like, but Jesse Plemons. And he's like, oh yeah.
Fucking Todd.
It's like, can we at least stay for Todd? And then he showed up, and then 20 minutes later, Brian leaned over and was like, I forgot that they were married in the movie.
Oh, man. And as such, I thought Jesse Plemons was going to stick around. I was like, boy, it's a long time before they introduce him. Here's fucking Todd. Oh, he's dead. And that's interesting. Yep. So apparently the actor who was going to play that role dropped out. Kirsten Dunst recommended Jesse Plemons, who fits this role like a freaking glove, but then was, pretty quickly dispatched of.
And Alex Garland was like, Jesse Plemons, like one of the best actors of our time. No. Okay, for you.
And only maybe
Miss
for her
Dunst.
would he take such a thankless role where he is an utter jerk face and then dies within 5 minutes.
He's pretty jerky. But he gets his comeuppance.
But if he was jerky, he'd be like chicken jerky or like turkey jerky or something really, really white, right?
Like a white meat jerky?
Right? Man, that dude is white in full sunlight.
But he gives, what's his face, his moment.
What's his face?
He gives Sammy his moment. Stephen Henderson needed his moment.
Yeah, he definitely needed his moment because after having a very prominent role in Dune Part 1, they just cut him out of Dune Part 2. He's like, oh yeah, you had that big role in that huge movie. For the sequel, we're just going to drop that character entirely. He needed some glory in 2024.
Oh, that's an injustice. He was great in this.
I mean, as people can be great in this movie, I suppose.
Given the circumstances, he sat on the couch in the hotel really great, and he sat in the car really well. And then he drove the car to his glory and saved all the people. Old man can't walk, saved all the people, and then died. A hero.
Right? She literally said, "You stay because you're old and you can't run."
That was kind of Lee to a T, though, right?
Well, yes, and then came her contradiction in the end.
What, when she was having her panic attack?
No, you're allowed to have panic attacks. You're allowed to be, war-torn and grizzled and stuff. She also was like, hey, idiot, Kevlar helmet. I don't want to see you without it. And then went into the White House with no helmet. And she would have been the first person to let that kid die, like she anticipated she would have to face at some point. She's like, I'll be there, and I'm going to take a picture of you when you die, and then save the kid in the most 310 to Yuma ineffectual way I've ever seen. Like, that should have been a flying tackle or nothing.
It's so true. What happened in 310 to Yuma?
That's when Christian Bale is loading somebody, I won't spoil it, on a transport of some kind, and then stands there in the middle of.
You're like, just try, Christian Bale. Just
right?
try.
Maybe don't turn your back to the gunfire that you've been successfully dodging, running, jumping, and avoiding for the last 30 minutes. Why?
Yeah, she definitely should have let Jesse get the shot. Or, right, done a flying tackle. I'm just repeating what you said because it's true. I definitely blame that on both of them. Kaylee Spaney was doing her Julia Butters thing, and you just had to let her do it.
Right.
But Lee shouldn't have done that or should have done it more successfully. So I blame them both for her dying. But there was no other... What other end was there for Lee?
No, I get it. But it is crappy that she went through so much in service of her journalism to die 10 feet from the president without ever having seen his face. That said, Jessie did her job for sure in that she was a journalist. And somehow we talked about JFK and the unlikelihood that Oswald would be able to get off 3 shots with world-class precision from a cheap Italian bolt-action rifle in like 3.6 seconds or whatever it was. She got off, 5-6 shots of Lee's death with like a manual freaking old-ass 35 millimeter camera. That's impressive. That thing wasn't even digital. She had to rack that film every time. So she definitely did her. She was aware of that death.
Yep. She was like, I'm going to get this. Didn't try to save her. Just
right?
Made sure she got that shot.
Flat on her back, elbows up or whatever. She was ready to go. It's almost as if it was intentional.
But I definitely called it. What was that single shot war movie?
Single shot. Well, The Children of Men, another of Brian's favorites.
Oh, yeah, he loves that. And he loves that sweatshirt, too.
Oh, you're talking about 1914?
Oh, right. Sam Mendes, 1917, right? So I called it. Won't say when. But they're talking, and I was like, yep, he's going to die. And then 5 minutes later, he died. So when she's trying on the green dress in the boutique, I was like, yep, Kirsten Dunst is dying.
Interesting. So she got her last moment of like a glimpse of an old world where they both did, where he was like, did we go back in time? And they're like in this totally normal town. And she got to try on a dress like in the olden days before she goes to meet her maker.
Yep. That's the idea. Now, it was delayed a little bit, right? Because they still had to make their big old journey to D.C. But as soon as she put on the dress and she had that very human moment, I was like, oh, man. Because I knew she was going to die. Every character has that moment. When they're destined to die, like, they have to humanize them in order for you to truly sympathize with their death.
No, it makes sense. And then Sammy said the same thing. He said, you never know what's coming around the next corner. Instantly dead. Oh my God, he's about to die. And it was a little bit delayed, but then he inevitably died. Now, he died more than anybody else because What's His Nuts said, we missed the story and Sammy didn't even die for anything good. But Sammy, among the people who died, arguably died for the best possible reason. Like, he saved them Breaking Bad style, and drove away and drove until they were on the highway and was like, I can't drive anymore. I'm dying over here. But he carried it out, man.
Yeah, dude. Got them out of imminent danger. Died like a champ in the back seat, not all falling to pieces, like holding it together.
Yeah. And we see the futility of his life and struggle when she's cleaning the blood off the back seat. Why? I don't know why. There was way too much blood. It was never going to come out. And what's the point anyway?
Yeah, I think that was the beginning of the end for her. It was definitely like the turning point, and I think that there was supposed to be symbolism of blood on her hands. But yeah, that's when she starts to lose it.
So, philosophically, this all holds together then for you? You're like, oh, okay, I understand what they were trying to do. You understand the symbolism of the fact that we weren't placed politically in this war. We didn't choose a side any more than the journalists did. This movie all held together for you conceptually like that?
I walked out thinking, so are we happy that the WF, or whatever they were called, won? Or took down, I don't know if one's the right word, that they took down the president? And also, Nick Offerman kind of wasted in that role.
Right. Well, right. The politics being deliberately vague. What kind of force would unite California and Texas in today's world? And the fact that that happened suggests that Nick Offerman was a really bad dude. And the only way he could have been worse is if he had retained his Nick Offerman authoritarian mustache. But he didn't.
All I got was that he had 3 terms and that, people were pissed that he was sticking around, holding on to that office. So you're saying the politics were deliberately unclear so that we weren't taking sides any more than our main characters, the journalists, were taking sides.
It makes the stakes ambiguous. And I guess it's open for discussion and it's not drawing a line politically of where this movie stands or whatever. Again, being a contradictory movie, this is a war movie through and through with war in the title that Alex Garland nods vigorously when someone says this is definitely an anti-war movie. And so it wasn't about the Civil War. It wasn't about the sides, who's right, who's wrong. It was about the despair and the human condition in trying to, everybody, I guess, trying to get through it. Largely antagonized by unseen oppressors or whatever. We never once got a glimpse of so much as a muzzle flash from the sniper in Christmas Town. Todd and his bunch was just evidence that these little pocket factions didn't matter. They were self-governed kind of pockets of radicalization or something. I don't know if it was about survival or why they had a whole pit full of lime-covered bodies. It kind of didn't matter. But when it doesn't matter, you're like, what are we fighting for?
And also, when it's lawlessness, who decides which rules stick? How does the press expect to be given journalistic privilege in any of these situations? I guess there's an understanding between the press and the operation to take down the president, and the operatives probably, rightly so, would like their operation to be documented, but they're also like, stay out of our way.
Is it?
I don't. This is the thing. I don't know. Like, I thought that this concept was best illustrated at the Christmas World. It was like a Nope-esque, like Western, like fun ranch, the Winterland. He's like, we're press, we're journalists, and he was like, now I understand why you have those big bold letters on your truck,
right?
Because it means nothing.
Is the sniper the bad guy? How do they know that those people that were under fire weren't the bad guy, that they weren't pinning down insurgents or something? Why could they just walk into any situation? Why does the journalism matter? We got to get there first. Who are you getting there before? You're interviewing the president for who? What is the virtue in journalism in this movie? Now, Alex Garland was a journalist and understands the importance of free press, and he said that one of his frustrations is how often the press is vilified. It's fake news, or it's being skewed or whatever, and it totally takes the focus off of the issue because the press is vilified for reporting. And the whole idea is supposed to be access for journalists, but who's watching? What media does an unsubstantiated quote from the president, who does that reach? Where he doesn't have a microphone, he doesn't have a camera in his hands. The president says, please don't let them kill me. And he's like, that's good enough. I got my quote that everybody on my team died to achieve, except for the stupid kid. Where's he going to print that? How could he have not come up with that crappy quote on his own from the safety of the hotel bar where they all met up, Mission Impossible style, before embarking on this stupid journey?
But this comes from people like you and I who are like, this job looks like it sucks. Like,
right?
Maybe there are real heroes who are truth seekers.
And then you find the truth and you don't sell it to a museum of antiquities or whatever, like Indiana Jones. What happens when you get the truth and the truth is intangible and you suffer or die as a result? Who is it benefiting?
You upload it to the PR Newswire, and then your name goes down in history as the last person to speak to the former president.
But okay, so it seems like the entire free world, the Western Front and all these people, for the most part, Todd notwithstanding, respected journalists enough to protect them, let them have their six, and accompany them wherever they went, which was mind-boggling to me. But the president, they said in D.C., they will shoot journalists on sight. So that obviously qualifies D.C. and the president as the bad guys.
Right, because viva la presse!
Is it, though? Is it?
That's the idea, but it doesn't mean that these people are not idiots. They have a semblance of journalistic integrity, but they're also adrenaline junkies. And Joel's walking around being like, that shooting makes me hard. And Jesse's like, it's a great idea for me to jump from this car window to that car window.
Okay. So they are the Indiana Joneses of journalists.
They're adrenaline junkies who, whether they hide behind their journalistic integrity or they do it as a release from the incredible pressures of their job, are out there like doing their thing. It doesn't mean that they're smart.
Then what drives Lee, who was crapping on the window jumping from the start? What drives Lee to be all broken and jaded and stuff, still needing to put her life on the line for the story.
That was her arc, right? Is that she lost faith in the power of journalism. But she's not. I guess the difference is that Lee's not out there to have fun. Like, Lee doesn't necessarily enjoy this. That's not what's driving her.
She's there to get it done?
She's there to get the job done because she knows that she can, and that it's probably these dalliances or whatever of these other journalists that make them less than she is. And she's also in a mother role and in a mentor role, assuming that role vis-a-vis Jesse. I mean, how annoying was it that Jesse was like, I gotta try it?
Right? You would think that was what would get Lee all fired up, because taking risks for the story is what Lee does. Jumping between the cars because the crazy guy did it, who ended up rightfully getting dead, there's no benefit to that. There's no end result. That was risking herself unnecessarily on Lee's watch, to Lee's car, you know what I mean? Or from Lee's car. And it almost got her killed.
Yep, and it definitely got those other two killed. Why did they deserve to die, the two crazy Asians?
Because they didn't take it seriously. They represented the carefree, like, I'm badass kind of thing that the others were so carefully resistant against. You know what the difference between Full Metal Jacket and Civil War is?
What?
Those dudes were fully trained and fully armed at all times, and things still went haywire. Do you know how many guns were the opposing forces, like the Predator? They won't kill you if you're not armed, that you're not a threat, you're not sport. You know, why didn't they pick up any one of the 100 guns that they saw in front of them just for personal safety? So when you get pulled out of the van and dragged to the lime pile by frickin' Todd, that you don't have something to... do you lose your journalism credibility? Do they revoke your press pass if you carry a gun? Why weren't they protected?
Yes, you compromise your civilian status.
They were quite literally, in the Civil War, war journalists. To whom were they reporting? Who is the message going out to? If they were following those dudes in that military incursion up the stairs to where the screaming dude was, and anytime someone is screaming, you just kind of shoot them to get them out of the way. If they had been flanked, would those soldiers have gone out of their way to protect the unarmed journalists?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the agreement.
But they were like, move when I move and stuff. Or maybe that was Lee saying that. But the whole idea was, you stick close to me and you move when I move, and I have the guns, and we're going to take out these forces, and hopefully you can get some good pictures of it. Maybe even get me a quote in Soldier of Fortune or whatever it is, whoever they're reporting to. But it was confusing how much license the journalists had to move freely through the country and do whatever they needed to do because they were press.
I'm pretty sure it was Reuters. They announced it when Jesse Plemons is questioning them. He was like, who do you work for? And then maybe it was the one time that Lee spoke, and she was like, Reuters. And he was like, doesn't sound American. They worked for a very reputable news outlet, but I just don't understand what that means in a time of disarray. And I guess we did get mixed responses throughout Civil War. Like, some operatives were like tolerant of having them around. Some were annoyed. Some didn't want them at all. Some were very hostile toward them. And they got into all of these sticky situations that they had to get themselves out of in order to get to their goal, because it was all about getting to DC. And once they get to Charlottesville, you know it's inevitable. Not only are they going to DC, but they're going all the way.
It's a death slog through America.
And interestingly, once the movie became completely predictable, it's when it actually started to pick up. Maybe it was just because of all the action set pieces.
It was basically 28 Days Later with war instead of zombies.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair comparison. But that's like one of your favorite movies ever.
I deny that it's one of my favorite movies ever. I think the sequel was actually better, Come At Me Bro, but it was Danny Boyle and Alex Garland kicking the zombie genre in the ass, which I really appreciated. But the zombies don't have a purpose. But the lack of definition for the war and what we were fighting for, what we were reporting on, and the milestones or whatever for this movie, because they were so vague, maybe I shouldn't hold it to a different standard than 28 Days Later, which was just They're fighting. Hopefully they survive. I think it was meant to be much more of a message movie, but I can't say that for sure, because how was this war defined? It's war, so there's war stuff everywhere. There was an intentional ambiguity. We're 580 miles from DC, right? We're 240 miles from DC, right? But where are we? Does it matter?
Yeah, they're like flyover states between California and New York.
You said that, not me. But I think it was intentionally we knew that it wasn't the Western forces in those states. It was, I actually don't know.
IMDb featured reviews, 8 stars. Be realistic, people.
About what? Is Alex Garland realistic? So basically it's saying this is as good as we're going to get. Let's be realistic. This is the best, most commercial movie Alex Garland can make, and I'm going to give it 8 stars. I'm going to disagree with that.
8 stars, a slice of shockingly personal experience of being in a war.
That I will concede. If you don't have a larger picture, if you're not Napoleon moving the pieces around the board, the people on the ground might have some confusion about what they're fighting for. It was personal in that respect, where you get into moral gray areas. Right, but we're the good guys. We're the press. It doesn't matter if you're not from America as we know it, you're going to get shot unceremoniously and thrown into the pit. It was personal, but that personal perspective had to be removed and sort of devoid of the overall politics that I think should have been driving the story. God, I can't believe I said that.
9 stars, disturbing, brilliant, and essential.
They're just like buzzwords, right? They're like poster quotes. They don't really say anything. Why was it brilliant? There were a handful of moments. I was like, oh, the Christmas Wonderland thing was the best scene in the movie. I remember thinking that at the time. The scene with the fire, when they're driving through the forest fire at night, good stuff. But it wasn't beautiful. It was just interesting and intimate and real, I guess. But I don't know that I would call any of that stuff brilliant or whatever.
3 stars, it's bad. Or maybe I don't get it.
I'm closer to that. I have to assume that's out of 10 stars, which I think it is on IMDb, right?
Yep.
Okay.
But I do think that's the difference. I think if you're politically invested, then you feel like this is an important movie.
But to be important, it would have to make a statement. It would have to contribute, right? I will say it's not fair to say that Kelly Ray didn't say anything, because emerging from this movie, she did ask me when it was written and if Alex Garland was taking into account the state of things today. I think the answer to that is, of course, yes, it is prescient thematically. But does that mean that it's impactful or saying something? Or is it just highlighting the horrific nature of these things? What do any war films contribute other than entertainment at this point?
And your final rating is?
I have to take a side, and my side is Alex Garland is deliberately provoking and frustrating in a way that is meant to evoke the sense of being in the middle of a war that you didn't wage necessarily. I don't feel like any message came to me. Therefore, it was unpleasant. The beauty of some of the scenes weren't enough to win me over and say that was a good war movie. And so I cannot fully come on board because I can't justify his message because it was so obscure. I'm giving it a whatever. I can't get on board because I'm old and I can't run.
It doesn't mean that you're no longer useful or irrelevant.
Right.
For different reasons, I think I will also give Alex Garland's Civil War, a below-the-line rating, a.k.a. a boring. Because quite literally, this movie is boring for like 2/3 of its runtime. And so that's our discussion on Civil War, available in theaters, but I'm sure coming to a streamer near you. 818-835-0473 is our hotline, or whatevermovies@gmail.com. You may email us, you may call us, you may text us, provided that the satellites are still orbiting our Earth and you're still able to get our podcasts at orwhatevermovies.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Hi, I'm Mark.
And I'm Peter.
We're the founders of Electrocast Media, bringing you great podcasts like Nightmare Road Stories, Tech Talk Revolution, and Bodacious Minds.
Electrocast networks include Ruby for female empowerment, the Best Business Network, and GPN for geopolitics. We built this company to create community and amplify diverse voices, and we really appreciate your support.
So keep listening to Electrocast podcasts and hear the culture.
Electrocast. Welcome to the Candle Power Hour. Come with us backstage behind the scenes of show business spanning over 4 decades and bringing you the experiences that can only be told by the people who were there.
Our guests are from the A-list, the F-list, and everyone in between. Get set for some of the most insane, hilarious, and inspiring stories you will ever hear.
I'm Mercury.
And I'm Diego.
Your hosts for the Candle Power Hour.
Electrocast.